Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, The Research Dividend, How Federal Investments Builds America's Innovation Economy. I'm Lisa Lewis, President and CEO of the University of Minnesota Alumni Association. The Alumni Association provides opportunities like this throughout the year for alumni and friends to engage with university experts on current events and important topics. These programs are made possible by Alumni Association members. So if you're joining today's webinar as a member, thank you. And if you're interested in supporting our work through membership, visit our website at umnalumni.org. Today, we will hear from Dr. Shashank Priya on federal investment in university research and how that drives our economy. After Dr. Priya's presentation, you'll have the opportunity to ask questions. You can submit your questions anytime using the Q&A feature found on our Zoom toolbar. I'm pleased today to introduce our presenter, Dr. Shashank Priya, who is the university's Vice President for Research and Innovation. In this position, he oversees a research enterprise of more than $1 billion across all 5 campuses and facilities. He manages units responsible for the administration of sponsored research and regulatory compliance, and technology commercialization, as well as 10 interdisciplinary academic research centers and institutions. Prior to joining the University of Minnesota in 2022, he was the Associate Vice President for Research and Director of Strategic Initiatives at Penn State University. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Shashank Priya.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Appreciate it. And thanks for the opportunity to talk to all of you. So my topic today is going to be on economic impact of federally funded research in the first part of my talk. And as we go along, we will shift to different sections. I want to start off with the history. And as we all know, that for almost 70 years now, we just had an excellent partnership between the educational system in the country and federal government, and that has provided us advancement across all domains, whether it's agriculture or transportation or internet or IT technology, etc. So every domain we have prospered and probably led the world in making breakthroughs and discoveries in all these areas. And this partnership over the years has transformed with variety of different programs and agencies that have their own goals and targets. But it has allowed us to identify good topics that we can focus on and provide the pathway for them to prosper so that they can be de-risked, and finally we can realize the fruits of these investments. For almost all the world, and since I worked in the government for a while, we were actually a model that people wanted to copy. And I remember in DC, in my office, hosting people from very different federal agencies in different countries who wanted to learn how we review the proposals, how we rank them, award them. And so we are a model basically across the world on how we actually fund our programs at the universities. And over this 7 or 8 decades, research has led to amazing discoveries, such as discoveries for antibiotics, discoveries for different types of gadgets that we use, like iPhones and internet technologies, commercialization of transportation systems, so all the way from land-based to water-based and air-based systems and so on. And all this is enabled by all the basic questions that we are able to answer in the lab. I want to show you the numbers, and they speak for itself, which describes that how over the years government has continuously either kept the funding level at the same level or increased it to adjust for the inflations and so on. And in 2023, the funding level was at the range of about 103 or $4 billion. And this funding level is distributed across roughly 400 plus institutions in the country. And this funding it serves almost all the disciplines that you can think of, right? So health sciences, engineering, social sciences, economics, etc. So pretty much the whole enterprise is funded by this amount. And any decrease in this amount is basically a direct impact on personnel because most of the time the money is used to fund postdocs and students, undergraduate researchers, and that's the major category in the research proposals at the universities. And so any decrease or any decline in this funding is basically reducing the number of personnel that are being trained and the areas that we are able to address. How does R&D create jobs? So basic science at the university answers some very fundamental questions about something that will be realized in the future, but you need this foundational knowledge in order to kick off an activity in that space. So an example would be Google that started with asking some basic questions about how we can do a search in a much more organized way. And you can trace back the evolution of this uh, where grad students were working on algorithms and data structures, trying to create backbone search technology, and they were able to demonstrate and build a server that was able to basically crawl the internet and was able to organize the information in a very systematic way. And you were able to find what you were asking for in a much faster way. And then Stanford was able to spin off this company because they realized very soon that it's too big for them to do it on their own. And it became a private company. And today, this company employs over 180,000 people. And so this is a story actually across many projects that are conducted at university, as I will show you in my next few slides. Another example of federal funding, um, how it leads to things that are utilized by people on a daily basis is the memory foam technology. Many of you are familiar with the pillows and beds that you can buy, and it provides you comfort and allows you uh, to basically experience comfort without disturbing anyone else who could be on the bed, etc. And this was developed by NASA in order to basically protect the astronauts from impacts while giving them comfort. And the evolution of this technology within the NASA uh, created the IP that was a spin-off into a separate company. Another example is DARPA's investment in Kalo technologies that finally led to the realization of modern day digital assistants or AI systems. And DARPA is also, as you know, one of the agencies that funded ARPANET, which later on became the internet. And so there are many such examples where you can see that things that affect our life on a daily basis were started by the federal programs, and many students and postdocs and faculty contributed on these programs to finally enable what we realize today in our comfort. So at the universities, we have almost a tradition of creating and enabling companies that finally will create products that will be utilized by everyone. And on this chart, you can see two different metrics. On the left-hand side is a national metric where it shows the number of small businesses created each year, and cumulatively thousands of startups over the next 15 or 20 years. And as we all know, our economy locally is much more dependent on employment offered by the startup companies. On the right is actually University of Minnesota's startup ecosystem. So you could think about like a funnel where at the top you receive the funding from the federal agencies or state or corporations. And this enables us to answer some key question or create a new knowledge domain. And then as a function of time over the next 3 or 4 years, you basically mature some of these outcomes that came out of the fundamental program. And once you have some positive outcomes that you realize a prototype that answers a very significant uh, problem for society. Then there are programs that allow you to de-risk this technology. So this prototype that you developed version one basically get de-risked, and you realize version two and three and four, and finally you have something in your hand that could be actually offered to a person or offered to somebody else as part of their system development. And this is the process that we have at the University of Minnesota, that we use the federal funding to initiate or create something, and then we apply our own funding on top of it few years later in order to de-risk various kinds of practical questions and finally spin off. And as you can see, in the last 5 years, we have created 100 plus companies. We are the largest startup creator in the state of Minnesota. And many of our companies have gone on to develop products that are affecting the life of citizens on a daily basis, residents on a daily basis. Here are the examples of these products. Um, I'll talk to you more about the decellularized engineered organs on the next slide. But Honeycrisp apple, probably if you shop at Costco or any other place, you probably have seen this product. This is about a $3 billion per year market for apples, and our varieties developed here play a big role. We have developed a lot of softwares, different software systems that are utilized in K-12 education, but also are used by executives in various corporations in order to identify the skills that they need to develop in order to be a better and effective leaders. Gentle leader, actually, I use it on my own dog to walk every day. Seat belts in your car, probably you use it every day. And various things, like if you use any MRI machines from various companies, there are probably patents from University of Minnesota that are part of it. Gene editing, which is probably curing a lot of various kinds of complex diseases, trace here. The company Medtronic was born at the University of Minnesota when Al Bakken and Eli, Dr. Lilly came together and developed this gadget, which was almost like a big box. And now these are almost a postage stamp size devices that are installed in the humans. So various things that improve quality of life for residents trace back their roots to the University of Minnesota. I want to pick two specific examples, given the times we are in, to describe how these play a role in really saving lives and improving the national security of our country. The first one is a company called Niron Magnetics. Actually, the name is a description of what they make. The capital N is for, let's say, nitrogen, and IRON is the iron. And if you combine nitrogen and iron together, you develop some of the best magnet that the world has seen. It's a very effective magnet. Magnets are used in all the things in your home, like your refrigerator, your washer, your dryer, your car, your TVs, different kinds of electronics that you use. So magnets are part of pretty much every device that we utilize in our life. But 90% of these hard magnets or strong magnets, they actually have critical elements, rare earth elements such as samarium or neodymium and so on. And that those elements come from foreign countries. And that's been a national security risk for a long time since we didn't have an alternative. And this spin-off from University of Minnesota was able to realize a magnet based on nitrogen and iron that allows us to create same properties as these critical magnets. And then in the times we are today, this company is going to be a very, very effective player in serving the needs of our government, but also the needs of many, many companies around the country to continue developing the development without being dependent on critical supplies outside the country. This company has raised quite a bit of venture money in the last few years, and they are actually developing a new manufacturing plant in Sartell, which will probably create 150 plus jobs. So this is an example that how university-based research by a faculty, Professor Jianping Wang, in his lab, finally, after many years of research and development, leads to establishment of a manufacturing facility that offers hundreds plus jobs in the local communities. This is another example in a very different domain, a company called Myromatrix, which was acquired by United Therapeutics uh, in a couple of years ago. And this company develops organs that can be basically outside the human body, grown, and then installed inside the human body. And it addresses a very critical need, as we all know, probably you know from your own neighbors, that there are many waiting lists for different kinds of transplants, whether it's kidney or lung or anything else. And there's a very much need all around the world where people have less access to these kind of organs for transplant. So this company is serving a very critical function in saving lives around the world by providing these organs and reducing the wait time on the waiting list. So examples like this, and it, as you can imagine, things like this need tens of years of development, a lot of clinical trials, and that's what the funding from agencies supports, because it's very hard to create all these things without the companies will not take the risk, or university will not take the risk, but it's very hard to take these risks without federal government being a partner in this process. There are many impact stories that I can describe to you, but the one I really want to mention is because it was such a moving story when I heard it from the woman who was diagnosed with late stage cancer, and she was surprised to find it when she went for a regular scan that she had this very late stage cancer, and then she was advised by the folks in the hospital that you should enroll in a University of Minnesota trial. And they are developing an experimental drug which could be probably very effective. And she did. I'm glad she did. And she was very glad she did, because a couple of years later, she found out that the tumor is shrinking. And actually, she's recovering very fast. So, but I think the toll that this kind of event has on the family is undescribable. When she was telling the story, the family member were in the audience, and she told that when she was going through the chemo process and she lost all her hairs on the head, the family members also shaved off their head in trying to console her and trying to make her feel better. And it just shows you that how it just affects everyone around you when you are going through this process. And this is the value of of developing these new types of therapies and drugs and medical devices, that you don't know when you will need them and with what type of features that people will have, that you will probably have to solve. And this is why we have to experiment with different types of devices and drugs and be ready for whatever comes in front of us. And this was very evident during the pandemics, that when things like Ebola come or Corona come, we don't have to panic. University researchers already may have something that can take care of this, and this partnership is what government enables. So let me shift gear in the next 4 or 5 minutes, try to describe to you the changes and impacts that they are having. At the university, we have received so far in last 3 months about 100 different types of disruptions. This could be terminations of programs or suspensions, stop orders that we can appeal, and pending appeals, we'll find out what happens. We have also received notices for capping the indirect cost at 15%, which we have filed. Sometimes working with our partners such as AAU or APLU, try to contest some of these changes. And as you can imagine, there are financial impacts of these disruptions, but they impact hundreds of people. There are staff members, there are students and postdocs who are directly working on these projects, and suddenly their whole career it becomes questionable. You could have worked on this project for 2 years and you have done 2 years of PhD thesis, and suddenly the funding gets away. And now you are facing a crisis on what to do. So this is a real painful experience. This is just a sharing timeline with you on various kinds of changes that have occurred over the past few months. So on the left, you see in January, we started to get the executive orders related to various types of activities that the researchers were engaged in, such as the DEI initiatives or gender-related research or international research and so on. And we started to get the federal funding pause starting January, end of January. And since then, there has been continuous suspensions, partial terminations, stop orders, and also capping of indirect costs and so on. And this on a daily basis, I think we get few of these terminations and stop orders. The types of research that is being impacted by these terminations. One example would be our NRI Duluth is trying to develop very cost-effective steel, and steel is another thing. We all have a lot in our house, in our life, right? So, and they're trying to develop new generations of steel which have very low carbon emissions in the whole process, like all the way from iron to the manufacturing of the steel. And make it much more cost effective so that our steel can be sold in international markets, both domestically and international, so that we have our industries flourishing. So it's a very beautiful research, and unfortunately, it's part of this process where Department of Energy is reevaluating some of these things. This is another example of a grant called Tic Tac. It's funded by EPA. This grant allows University of Minnesota researchers to work with communities who don't have access to a lot of resources and try to help them to apply for various kinds of programs federally and statewide. So it's helping rural communities, underserved communities, and tribal areas, and help them to improve their energy and environmental efforts. And unfortunately, this grant was stopped with almost $6 million unexpended. And as you can see, this has impact on many staff at the university. So I'd like to close with some of these messages that despite all these challenges that we are facing, our research enterprise remains very motivated and very inspired to continue doing things that we are doing. We are trying to solve big problems, complex problems that impact the lives of residents all around, both in Minnesota and outside Minnesota. And I think we remain committed to doing so. We are trying to respond to some of these changes. The most important thing is to preserve our folks, these very talented people who are involved in the research, and find ways to support them so that they can move through this phase and transition to some other programs that we can find for them. That's pretty much that's a very big priority for us. Second is to just anticipate what may come in future, and this unpredictability or uncertainty is a big challenge, but hopefully we are able to model some of these changes and prepare for them as we go along. Working with various national organizations so that we can be a participant in advocacy and trying to demonstrate the impact that it is having, and hopefully our public support can build around it so that our leaders can engage in conversations about reducing some of these things that are happening with the research enterprise. So we need your help. We need your help to help us in conversations, both in your political arena with your leaders around you, but also telling the public about what impacts these changes are having on the universities and the whole small business and other enterprise. Just reinforcing the value of fundamental research that happens at the universities. I think a lot of people don't realize that these small projects that we do here ultimately create a large impact on the community, because It takes time, it takes years to develop them, but ultimately the goal is to realize the benefit for the society, um, and help us in our contingency planning and hopefully finding the ways in which we can support the people that are affected by these disruptions that are happening. So with that, I'll stop and pass it on to Lisa.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Priya, for just a really enlightening presentation. And as I was listening to you, I thought, well, due to federally funded research at universities, we work better. Many more people have jobs. Our economy is better. We live better. We are healthier. And we sleep better. That's the thing I learned. So many positive ways that federally funded research supports the economy and society. So a question has come in about, couldn't private equity or private foundations or corporations fill in the gap that might be missing from cuts in federally funded research?
So it's a very good question. I think in the short term, we need your help. So private foundations, investments through equity firms such as venture or other type of firms. In short term, I think we definitely need your help to plan for the contingency and plan for the disruptions. But in the long run, as I was describing to you in the slides, there is no substitute for federal funding. The federal funding has been, as I said, this 103 or $108 billion is the enabler for all the different types of breakthroughs that we actually rely on to keep advancing our society. When we think about going to the space, or we think about all the transportation, like your airplane systems or electric vehicle cars, or this is enabled by this long-term curiosity-driven research that the government allows us to handle. And it not only gives us the chance to work on these big problems, but it also gives us chance to attract most talented people from all over the world to come here and join this project. And it's a magnet for all over the world that people want to be part of American University to work on federally funded project. This is what creates Nobel Prizes and creates National Academy members and creates different kinds of breakthroughs. So there's no substitute for that, and it's been the enabler of leadership of our country across the world. But in short term, yes, we should be able to find partners in the society to help us navigate through this disruptive process.
So it sounds like we need both. We need both
Definitely.
kind of private partners and the federal government, and there's a partnership and an ecosystem that helps one build off the other. Great. There's another question about advocating with Congress for additional federal research funding or to stop cuts. If somebody was going to call their member of Congress and talk to them about this, what would you say should be their kind of key messages or key points that might break through some of the clutter and other, conversations that are out there?
That's a very good question, Lisa. So uh, the way I think about it, they need to understand the impacts of the cuts that are having on both the progress in the science and technology, but also the people. Um, so I think examples that we can bring in front of them, that because of, let's say, reduction in the NIH program, there is an impact now on the clinical trial being conducted to solve the cancer research, or the cuts in the National Science Foundation are going to have an impact on discovering a material that could be very effective in developing new artificial intelligence technology or a quantum technology. So I think we need to correlate specific examples so that our legislatures can understand that ultimately we are basically reducing the possibility of creating opportunities for our residents, opportunities through jobs and employments, opportunities through services that they may realize, through healthcare products that they may realize. So we are ultimately taking off things that will be effective for people to have a better life.
Great. And a follow-up on that. So they're asking, is there a list of the stop orders or disruptions that the audience can refer to give some specific examples of what would be harmed if these cuts went through?
Yes. So actually, we are going to do a public presentation on the next board meeting. I think it's on May 9th. So in that presentation, we are going to share some information that we were able to get it released through various processes. So in sharing specific grants that have been terminated, we just want to make sure that the PIs who are working on it, they are comfortable in releasing the information. The agency program managers who have been working on funding this, they are comfortable. So there's a lot of permissions that we need to get before we release. So for some, we were able to find all these permissions, and I think you will see them in our board presentation on May 9th. And for others, we are working on so that we can slowly also provide that information to the community. Yeah. But we'll
And
love to categorize, sorry, Lisa. So we will love to characterize that some programs are energy related, or some programs are environment or sustainability related, and so on. So we should be able to provide that context and the number of programs.
And for those in the audience, every Board of Regents meeting is you can follow it online, and it's also recorded. So we can send out the link to those who are participating once you do that presentation to give people additional context, and you can hear more from Dr. Priya. An additional question is asking about the ROI of $1 invested in research. How do you kind of frame out every dollar invested in research? Is there an economic benefit that they can cite?
Yes, so actually, university does this financial impact analysis or public impact of our the whole enterprise. And I think University of Minnesota makes $11.5 billion dollar worth of impact on the state. For every dollar invested, I think we realize about $11 worth of impact. In our own office, when we fund programs as a seed grant, this is one of the ways to trace back that what this grant led to 5 years later, and we do that analysis to arrive at ROI. And for each dollar we invest in our office in different research programs, we realize $16 worth of impact. So these are the numbers we have to present actually to our state legislatures and others to show that we are creating value. Um, and so I think the numbers are very clear, that universities create very, very dramatic reward on the investments that we get from whether federal government or corporate or other donor funds. As a function of time, we create much higher value for everyone involved.
And I'll just reiterate that for every dollar spent, $16 in return. That's a terrific rate. Um, A question about students. So they're asking, what do you suggest for incoming graduate students who would like to be involved in research at that time? And how can they pursue involvement in research when opportunities seem to be declining?
Actually, I hope collectively all of us can motivate our young generation to continue to be part of the research enterprise. I mean, we would never like to lose any talent, and we would never hope that anyone is short of the resources or short of the infrastructure in order to accomplish the goals and ambitions that they have. So we hope we can continue to bring all the talent into the university system, and this will require collective uh, ex engagement in conversation across high schools and other places. My actually major challenges, uh, because of immigration related changes that are happening. The way I think about it is University of Minnesota is a gateway for attracting talented people from all over the world. So domestically, from all the states and internationally. And we bring these very bright people and we train them and teach them by engaging them in all these programs. And few years later, they actually get accustomed to Minnesota climate and US climate, and they get absorbed in our companies. And these are the workforce that allow our Fortune 500 companies and our Fortune 1000 companies to prosper, continue developing new products, continue getting new ideas to advance their technology and be a leader in the world. And and so we never would like this pipeline to be stopped in any way. Actually, we should have more in this very competitive world when we are engaged in competition with many different countries. We would actually like to be having more brighter and more talented people select us for furthering their advancement in education. So this will require all our collective effort. We need to engage in conversations with young people, keep them motivated, keep them inspired, but also collectively find resources for them to continue advancing in their career opportunities.
Yeah. Right. So federally funded research not only attracts, it's not only intellectual property and innovation, but it attracts the talent from around the world that
Yeah.
comes right here to the United States and then goes into private sector to drive the economy. So multiple outcomes from that initial investment.
Yeah, and the small businesses, Lisa, that we were talking about, like all these hundreds of companies that we create and thousands of companies around the country that are created each year, they rely on the availability of these very talented workforce.
Right.
And they rely on the training that is provided by federally funded programs, because that's the partnership that we have with the government, that we will create knowledge for them, train them on equipments, on manufacturing processes, on digital processes. And that way, when they go to a small business, they are already fully ready to work from day one for them. And this drives the local economy and creates the value. So I hope we can engage in conversations, everyone that is part of this very nice feedback loop, um, to continue to make this happen.
Yeah, another audience member is asking if you can discuss how research in academia is different from R&D in the private sector, and what are the intellectual property implications of innovation within the university?
Actually, it's very good, timely question, because I spent a lot of my time yesterday with Medtronic. We have a very, very good partnership with Medtronic, which is a local company here. Um, and so one way to think about this is uh, a company such as Medtronic has certain product line that they want to grow, um, but they have limited time and resources to invest in risky ideas that could bear the fruits at some point of time. These are great ideas, very creative ideas, but a company cannot take that early, very, very early stage risk. Rather, they would need a PhD student or a postdoc type of person to involve, and they do their thesis over the next 3, 4 years in answering some very complex questions that are preventing from moving this idea to the next level. And so they get engaged with us, and they partner with our faculty, in trying to answer these questions. And if the answer is positive after 3 or 4 years, then it starts to create an applied project that now Medtronic can drive with their engineers in partnership with our folks. And the IP that gets generated in that process, we establish agreements with companies, and we give them options. Actually, Minnesota's IP called MinIP model is a standard in the country. Many other universities copy our model, and we get emails all the time. So it allows basically companies that are engaged with us to take most of the things that they develop back into their enterprise so that they can advance it in their own ecosystem. But yeah, another example I can give is our amazing partnership with a company called 3M, also a local company. And over the years, and these are many, many years, over 7,000 alumni from university have gone on to work at 3M. that's a workforce impact. But they have created many different products that we realize, um, all the way from things that go in the paint to things go in the solar cells and many electronic items that we utilize. So it's a and the ideas for many of these things are born because somebody in the lab is trying to just ask some very quick, curious question. What if I do this chemistry? What type of material I will get? And that's what I think companies partner with us, that you go ahead and take that risk. And later, if the answers are in the right direction, we will advance this to the further level.
Yeah, the basic research is
Yep.
you need the federal support to take that level of risk and not knowing exactly where it's going to end. And then it goes into industry to be further, developed. That's very helpful. Um, as we think about, there was a question just about global competitiveness. And if the federally funded research is limited or stopped to some extent, what does that do to the US's global competitiveness in terms of both innovation and industry and talent?
Yeah, I mean, this is a big question that we feel this would at this time when we are in a race probably to create AI technology or quantum technologies or next generation of transportation like these self-driving cars and so on. At this point, when we are in really a very competitive race with industries all around the world, any slowdown in the process of creating the workforce or in the process of creating new IPs or in the process of creating new fundamental knowledge will actually hold us back. Um, and this will be evident in the loss of jobs, in the loss of revenue, a reduction in the total GDP, and so on. So I think it's a very important that we continue to accelerate at this point, not actually de-accelerate the pace at which we are advancing our science and technology, because the world is becoming more and more competitive, and our industries need support in order to become not only maintain their position, but actually grab more market share as they advance their portfolio.
Are there national security implications to falling behind on research?
Definitely. So and at this point, national security is very broad. So at the University of Minnesota, we are going to launch an institute called National Security Research Institute on June 16. So if you are in the audience and you would love to join us in this launch ceremony, please email us and contact us. We'd love to have you. Um, Under this National Security Research Institute, there are 6 areas we feel are very critical that needs to be solved. One area is called hypersonics. So these are very rapidly moving objects, a mile per second velocity or more. And they have various implications on both defending ourselves and also creating ways in which we can deploy things. Area of microelectronics. As you all know, we are in race for semiconductors. All these GPUs and CPUs that NVIDIA and Qualcomm and other companies are developing in order to make very faster AI servers and so on. We feel that's an area that we need to discover new semiconductors. Another area we are very excited about is called geospatial imaging. For example, on your phone, you see the maps, and on these Google Maps or Apple Maps, you are able to see all these layers like restaurants and gas stations and so you can think about in a context where you have tens of layers on top of the map, and you can run your AI program to ask question, what type of people live in this geographical area, what food they eat, what clothing they use, what type of diseases they have, and so on. And you get the answer right away on your map. So that geospatial imaging is strong. There are 3 other areas I won't describe in details. One is called extreme materials. The other area is in the uh, environment and trying to basically create cybersecurity or data and AI related advances. So we feel these 6 areas are where we feel we will be able to impact the national security.
Well, that's terrific. The questions keep rolling in, but we are short on time. So you have, I think, piqued the curiosity of a lot of alumni and friends. We will take a look at the questions, and if we can get you answers and some summary information, we will be happy to do that because we want to make sure that our alumni and friends community have the information to talk to your friends and neighbors and to effectively advocate on behalf of the university. So thank you to everyone for your insightful questions today. And thank you, Dr. Priya, for a really illuminating conversation about the importance of federal investment in research and how that spurs the economy. But now is the time for us to rally together and take quick and effective action to ensure robust and consistent federal funding for research. Congress is currently negotiating a new federal budget for next fiscal year, and your voice matters. So you can simply scan the QR code that is on your screen or navigate to the link to fill out a form and take action right now. That link will also be added to the chat. And we encourage you to share your story. There was a question earlier about how do I effectively advocate? And one of the ways to advocate is to share your story about what the University of Minnesota has meant to you. It might have given you the skills to succeed in your career. It might have helped you start a company, or you might be using University of Minnesota research in your company, or you see it in your community, or it's affected a family member. Or we've talked about the economic impact of the university on the state and beyond, and that is $1 invested yields $16 in return. And your story really matters, and your voice matters, and it's highly effective. And as a constituent, your member of Congress wants to hear from you. And research shows that a personal story is 22 times more effective than a fact alone. So as an alum, you're an example of the University of Minnesota's impact, and together we can have a powerful voice across the country. There are more than 570,000 U of M alumni in the United States. So again, you can simply scan that QR code or navigate to the link and add to the many voices that are supporting federally funded research. And with that, this concludes today's webinar. Thank you again to Dr. Priya and to everyone who has joined us today. We are sharing this recording with you along with a summary of action steps you can take, and you'll be getting that by email. And we will also be posting this webinar on the UMAA website. So if you know of a friend or a neighbor who would like to see that and might benefit from this information, we encourage you to share it with them. And we appreciate, again, you joining us today, and have a great rest of your day.